Welcome to Hello Chaos, the weekly podcast exploring the messy and chaotic lives and minds of founders, entrepreneurs, and innovators. Each week, I have the privilege to speak with founders across the spectrum, founders from different industries at different stages, from startups to mature at all sizes. So I am very fortunate. Our listeners get to hear the raw and the unvarnished viewpoints, getting incredible insights at what it takes to start and scale a business or just to become a better founder, a better CEO, a better business leader. Today, our guest is Kaden Mattinson. Kaden is a motivational speaker, the author of Raising Resilient Children Strategies for Youth Empowerment, and the executive director and founder of Mending Minds Village. Kaden has motivated audiences to better their mental health and supported families in crisis for the past 5 years. So welcome, Kaden. Welcome to Hello Chaos.
Thanks for having me in. This is great.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. I've been excited to actually talk to you and learn more about you. So just start us telling about your journey. How in the world did you get started with founding Mental Minds Village?
Yeah, so Mending Minds Village was kind of the culmination of several mental health crises in one.
Really?
It
So
really,
a lot of oh shits or a lot of
it was
ahas.
it was a combination of both.
That's right.
Combination of
It's
both.
usually where aha meets oh shit is where like the ideation sets apart.
It is. Yeah, and it was, I'll tell you, it was not at all like if you could have asked me if that's what it was going to be, you know, in the creation of all the chaos, I would have told you absolutely hell no.
Isn't that funny how we started that? It's like, well, where did you think like early on, I'm going to start my own business? Did you always think that kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit about you from?
Before we started Mending Minds Village, I actually ran a towing business in the middle of COVID.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was, running a nonprofit was definitely not on my bingo card.
Right. Yeah.
It
How
was
how did it come to be?
So we actually founded it out of our family's crisis. We founded it
Okay.
during my daughter's mental health crisis.
Okay. How old's your daughter?
Now she's 10. So we founded it when she was 5, almost 6,
Oh, wow.
and
Baby.
baby. And
Yeah.
and at that point, at the beginning of it, it was kind of founded in the middle of a necessity. And if looking at it's always funny looking back, right?
Yeah.
Hindsight's
Hindsight's
always a bitch. But hindsight, looking back at it, I'm like, we couldn't have started it at a better time.
really.
It was right in the midst of, if you look back at everything that everybody went through with COVID, it's right at the peak of the conversation of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so we founded it right at a great time. And then, kind of as a culmination of the process, I founded Mattinson Consulting, which is now the speaking and the consulting side of things, the
Okay.
coaching business. And so running both of them simultaneously, one complements the other, which is always awesome.
So you've been doing it. What's been the biggest kind of aha moment for you?
It continues to go. I mean, we think that we've reached peak, and we think that we've kind of got to where we're like, okay, this is how the business is going to go.
Right.
And then, we've been invited into some of the wildest things, and we've actually got an event coming up in May of this year that tops everything we've done so far. And I thought we couldn't do that again.
Really? Where's the event
We
going to be held?
we are working with the University of Utah
Okay.
to host Children's Mental Health Day at the Utah State Capitol.
Nice.
And so that event, we're going to bring kids to the Capitol to meet with the people that are in charge of their mental health benefits and in charge of, the mental health providers. And, we listen to families all the time tell us that the mental health state in the country is a joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
The
you need
insurance and having to
the insurance, all of
support.
the legislation around all of that is a nightmare. And we're like, well, let's bring the families that are struggling because of it
Yeah.
straight to the leaders that are in charge of that.
That's fantastic. Advocacy. That is a hard uh it's a hard place to be.
It's, I'm telling you, the whole organization has been between a rock and a hard place.
Really. What has been the most rewarding part of the journey so far?
Watching families actually get results. Watching
Really?
families that are come to us in absolute chaos and know that we've been there. And so we know the answers. We know how to get you from that chaos to, I'm not going to say stability completely, but at least to some semblance
Like a
of
solution.
structure. Yeah.
Some solution.
Yep.
What's been the most challenging part? I mean, you said you were running a towing business. Now you've jumped in. You're a nonprofit. You're an advocate,
Yep.
trying to change laws, but also trying to support through therapy and coaching.
Yep.
What's been the most challenging part?
The losses. That's the hardest part of it is
As in like suicide or
we've had a
okay.
couple of clients that the weight was too much, and so we've lost a couple.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's the hardest one.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part.
Um so what's something that that you've discovered about yourself? Like what's been the most surprising thing that you were like, "Whoa, this is I'm amazing at this." Like is there anything like that you were just like what's an aha of like a self-discovery moment?
I've always thought of myself as being more reserved,
Mhm.
right? And being more in the back. And I've found out that I'm kind of the wolf in the woods.
Really?
I've
The
I was
warrior.
given that first opportunity to confront leaders and not just state, but like I've actually talked to like national leaders
Very
and
good.
called them out on their policies. And I'm like, and people are like, I can't believe you did that. I'm like, yeah, me neither.
Yeah. Where do you think you drew that from? That strength?
Just from the process. It's been from all the experience and watching all these families that are just absolutely devastated
So you're
and
like
being like,
carrying that
this
weight
is the
with
weight
you.
of it and the passion of it is like, okay, no, we've got to do something about this.
Hmm. Oh my God, that's amazing. What's something that you like about yourself that you wish other people would recognize more? That other people would recognize more of you?
Not necessarily of me, but of themselves. I wish people would understand how passionate they are. I talk to a lot of people that I'm like, you could be doing so much more than what you're allowing yourself to do.
Yeah, like finding their purpose, like their true gifts,
Yeah.
uncovering their gifts.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, can you give me a story? Like, is there, I know these are some of yours, you probably can't share too many stories, but is there one in particular that?
I can, as far as like clients, I can't really share, but I do have actually a director of mine that started out as a client, and I was like, no, 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 you're not, this is not client. We're not allowing you to be in the victim role in this because you are way stronger than you believe you are.
Really?
And so she became one of our closest friends. We talk every day, but bringing her on. Her name's Tracy, and she is phenomenal. We brought her in, and she was like, we said, every client, I bring him in and I sit him down and I say, what is your number one problem? Like, if we could help you tackle one thing in the next 30 days, what do we need to accomplish?
Okay.
And with hers, it was just to help connect with the resources, help her get her grandson into treatment, and then help get him out of that chaos that he was in. The more we sat down and talked with Tracy through the process, the more I was like, man, you have all the answers.
Yeah.
You have that fire. Like, what is it? What do we need to do with you? Do we need to like give you that kind of the spark to have that conversation,
Right.
put you in the environment so that you can let this all go? And it was as soon as we I was like, look, I'm going to set up the meeting. You're going to sit down with this leader that you're wanting to talk to. I'm going to facilitate the meeting. You're going to run it. And I will be behind you to be like, kind of re-steer the conversation if we need
Right.
to. but you're going to be the one that does this because you are way stronger than this.
Empowered her.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And man, if I can't tell you the amount of strength that that brought out of her, because of her, we connected with families that we would have never had the chance to,
Really, her
because she
story.
was like, "Oh, I can do this. So now I need to go to this one. Now I need to go to this one."
Evangelized it. Yeah.
And wow, she's every day I'm like, "Tracy, I can't believe that you really didn't believe you could do this."
And she's probably like, that's something that was probably surprising to her of what she learned in the process.
Well, and even
Yeah.
still, I have to be like, we'll have conversations and she's like, "I don't know if I can do that." I'm like, "Tracy, you talk to the director of the, entire Southern Division of Mental Health Board. I think you can do this."
Yeah. Like, you got it. Like, push those people to,
And
push them.
we relight that fire, and then she takes off and runs with it, and
I love
I
it.
love it.
So what's were there any like myths or misconceptions you had going into either starting the nonprofit of like, this is how you run a business, or this is what I've heard about running a business, and you got in there and you're like, what the hell are people thinking? Like this, no one prepared me for this. Did you have any of those kind of moments? Or maybe
So
you're going through it now?
I've got that on both sides of the business, actually.
Okay.
So on Mending Minds and on Mattinson Consulting, on the coaching side of things, on the nonprofit, if I can tell anybody listening one thing about running a nonprofit,
Huh.
is that your current relationships, are far more valuable in your nonprofit than you even can imagine. Conversations that you're going to have with current connections
Yeah.
are going to be what keeps your fire going. It's not the national foundations, it's not your grantors, it's not banks that you're going to fund the organization, but it's the everyday people that you work with now.
Right. Well, it's getting people on your, to understand your mission, the cause, and
Yep.
and have that shared fire,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's like you hear all the time, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
that's right. That's right. Have you do you has your circles changed over the year? Like you're getting into different circles of influence?
It has to.
Yeah.
It has to. If you are wanting to be successful, if you are like we started out in our little small area, and now we're reaching the state level, and so you can't, if you're wanting to develop, you can't stay in the same place.
Right, right.
You've got to get uncomfortable, and you've got to get outside that normalcy.
That's right. We say you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you had to hit rewind on anything, would you do anything different? Like a lessons
Yes.
learned?
Yes, I would. Yep.
Like what? What
So,
what what was the biggest lessons learned for you?
you know, complacency kills everything. And
Yeah.
sitting in, taking the first losses a lot easier would have gotten me so much further. Taking the first, you always think that, purpose is where it's at. Everybody
Right.
knows that mental health is so important. And so it should be super easy to run this.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely
Nice.
not.
Yeah. What's
And
the
so learning to take those no's not personal, and
Yeah.
being like, okay, you just don't see it yet.
Right.
You
Or
will.
or you're like, okay, I need to like reframe this. They're not getting it. Do I need to
Yeah.
we call it reframe the decision, or
Decision.
we need
Yep.
to provide more clarity to our brand and to the cause. Like, we're solving a problem. They need to know what
Exactly.
problem we're solving. And it's really
Exactly.
hard, especially as founders. Sometimes I was telling another founder this morning is it like sometimes we sit so close to a painting, where our nose
Mm.
is right up to the canvas and we're looking at every brushstroke and looking at all like and analyzing the noses, the like, how do I do this? That we have sometimes it's hard for us to take a step back and look at the bigger picture or to explain the vision of the picture.
Right.
And
Right.
even, I've been in marketing for 30 years and my businesses have been the hardest to refine our messaging, give clarity to, the problems we solve. And I've had to kind of say to my team, like, don't let, like, I'm too close to it. I am way too close. I need to step back, or I need to be forced to step back. But I don't know if you found that.
Yeah. Yep.
We just get so close to it.
Well, and that's why they say, like, your nonprofit or or even your any business
Right.
is so personal to you. There's a reason, there's a passion behind what you're doing.
Right.
And so for anything to go wrong in it is so extremely difficult for us as a founder.
Yeah.
And for anybody else in the business, it might look like just a speed bump. And for us, it's like we're about to lose everything.
Right. Right. We're gonna lose it all. And that pressure is awful.
Yeah.
How have you stayed motivated? Like, are there tips or tricks that you've learned from other people that are like, okay, this is how you manage stress, or this is how you, get through these challenges? Or are there any like insights that you've learned about yourself and what you've had to do?
Yeah, so that's kind of where the motivational, speaking came in. That's where Mattinson, the coaching business, came in.
You're
Is
like, somebody needs
I had to remember for myself that, like, it's okay to take 5 and step back. It's okay to take that 5 minutes, readjust, and when you're looking over everything, when you're doing that readjustment, look over everything so that you can remember that, like, yeah, this right now, this sucks, but, like, look at how far we've come too.
Yeah,
Look at all the things we've accomplished. This loss is not going to define all of this work.
that's right. And we always say it's like celebrate even the smallest of wins.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so what do you think? So, when you started and you thought you had a daughter that was going through a health crisis, how did you guys uncover the problem like that you guys faced? And you were like, I can fix that through this nonprofit. What was that process like?
We got so mad at the system. I mean, and MAD doesn't cover it,
Yeah.
but there are, with what we were going through with her, like, there's not really a definition of it. There's not like a diagnosis of the behaviors that she was going through. And so that kind of pissed us off because I was
Yeah.
like, well, there's got to be something behind this. There's an explanation.
Right.
And, and about a year in, it started putting her into like inpatient settings.
Okay.
So 7 and 8 years old,
Oh.
she is inpatient in the hospital because being home is not really safe for her to do.
Right.
And we get into those settings and find out that in a unit,
They're not equipped for children.
24 of them, 4 out of 48 beds are her age, and they
Oh
have
my.
no idea what to do about it.
Whoa.
No clue. And out of those 24 kids, we started hearing stories from parents of those kids where more than half of those, so 10 to 12 kids, were of the same challenges that we were experiencing with my daughter, where they're not able to get testing, they're not able to get a treatment because they're not able to get a diagnosis. And so we're like, okay, so we're not the only ones.
Right.
And we knew we weren't, but okay, we're not the only ones. That's validating. And then it's like, okay, but then now what?
Right.
If we have all these kids that aren't getting caught in diagnoses, why?
Right.
And
Right.
so, and then we called, I'm not one to just sit back and take no for an answer anyway. And so we got a no from her therapist. So we called her therapist supervisor, and the supervisor says, well, I'm not the one. You got to talk to the director. And I talked to the director, and the director was like, yeah, I don't really have an answer for you.
Right. And you're like, look, we're not alone. It's like you start looking the stats of like, that's just one hospital in one city. And
Right.
like these percentages, these aren't anomalies.
Right.
I bet this is more of an epidemic than people realize.
Yeah.
Is that how like that train of thought? And
Yep. And it was
nobody
funny
had an
because
answer. Nobody had an
nobody
answer.
had an answer.
Oh,
Nobody then had an answer. And it was so funny because the director was actually taken aback that I was like not taking no for an answer from
Right.
him.
You're like,
And I was like,
we can't just go. We can't just shrug this off.
This is not something that you can just ignore.
Right.
And I said, so if you can't give me an answer as a parent,
Right.
how do we get answers? What do we got to do?
That's right.
And he's like, well, do you want me to be completely honest? And I said, preferably, yes. And he said, as an individual and as a parent, you're not going to get anywhere. He said, you need to get an advocate. You need to get somebody certified that can do this for you. And I said, well, all right. And I hung up the phone and I looked at my wife and I said, so we're going to start a nonprofit. And she was like, wait, what? No, we're not. We can't even handle our own crisis. We're not handling everybody else's too.
Right.
And I was like, no, but we need to. Like that was
solution.
That was the answer that he gave me. That was the solution. And she was like, well, if that's the answer, then let's go.
Yeah. How did you tap into any other resources? Like, cause nonprofits, I always hear like they're difficult to start, like all the red tape in certain states to even just, get your,
just to run,
just to get one.
Yeah.
Did you go, I'm going to start calling, these like chambers, or did you call other nonprofits to get, how did you get started? Like, what was that process like?
No, that's another one of those hindsight is, hindsight kills me on that one because I was so furious about what was happening that I wasn't really paying attention to the process of what was necessary to start it. And so like
most founders, we just go.
I was just like, oh, we're going to do this. And I registered it with the state and they were like, okay, now you need to go to the government, to the federal government and get your 501c3. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. And then it was like, okay, get your permits and get your, call and make sure the mental health authority knows what you're doing. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. And so it took 6 months. It took 6 months for us to do it. But in the process, we got the name established. We got the temporary okay for the C3 within just like 30 days. And so we started moving at that point. I wasn't going to wait around. And the conversations started changing immediately as soon as I had the name behind us.
It's funny how that happens, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the director, I called and talked to him again and I was like, okay, now I'm not calling you from me. Now I'm calling you from the organization and I need your data. And he was like, yeah, see, now that changes things. And I was like, see, but why does that change things?
Right.
What does my having a name and an organization behind me make a difference in whether or not you can give me this information?
You just, like I said, you found a gap. And also think about it. It's crazy to me that also there was no other organization that was laser focused or even found the gap that was already trying to find the solution to it. Because, it's always like, hey, there's got to be somebody else has got to be aware of this. And it's amazing when you find out, oh no.
We are still alone.
Yeah.
We've been in organization for 5 years. And 5 years, that's crazy. Been going 5 years this year. And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Because that's a milestone, all of it its own.
Most don't make it 2 years.
No.
So that's crazy to me. But I still talk to other organizations. I still talk to, other collaborations. And they're all like, you're the only organization that does this. And I'm like, why?
Right.
Out of 50 states, out of 365 billion people, why am I the only one that is focused on getting these kids treatment?
And the fact that you were presenting so many kids.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like it's my daughter's the only one. This is no, we've got mass.
Yeah.
Behind
we've
us.
Identified in 12 different states now, we've identified kids under the same category.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And in the state of Utah alone, we identified 18.
Oh my goodness. And that's why I applaud you for doing this and you got to keep asking why.
You do. Yeah.
Why is this? Why are we the only one focusing on this? But also there's a problem here and we need to fix it. And
we had to broaden actually a little bit because we were only targeting kids specifically with the diagnosis of DMDD, which is a disruptive mood dysregulation disorder.
Okay.
ODD, so oppositional defiance, and then kids that are labeled with a conduct disorder.
Okay.
And the conduct disorder kids, that diagnosis is terrifying because
break down those three. What is the diagnosis or what's the description of the behavior between those three? Because they all sound alike.
They're all similar. They're all
Okay.
very similar. And they are typically given to kids that don't quite meet the characteristics of autism, but they have a lot of the same behaviors as
Okay.
autistic. The oppositional defiance are the kids that you see in schools now that, you know, we used to label them as ADHD or ADD.
Okay.
And so ADHD still exists, and that there's there's its own diagnosis for that.
Right.
But a lot of these kids have behavioral problems at home. They don't listen to authority figures in schools. They don't want you struggle with basic learning concepts,
Right.
and it's not
Structure.
always
It's structure. They fight
it's
structure.
structure. They hate
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
despise it. That's a lot of the ODD. DMDD is exactly what it sounds like, emotional dysregulation, and it can be any number of triggers. Most of the time, there is a specific either person or environment that sets them off,
Okay.
but it can be any number of things. And then you get the conduct disorder, and
Okay.
that therapists do not like giving a conduct disorder diagnosis. Matter of fact, they typically won't give it unless they meet 90 to 95% of the parameters that are
Okay.
in the DSM. Conduct disorder is where you get a lot of the aggressive behaviors.
Okay.
ODD, DMDD, you get some aggression. Typically, it's focused on one individual or a couple of individuals. Conduct disorder is very specifically anti-regulation, anti-law, anti.
Okay.
Um,
And then you're saying that, so those are three that are diagnoses, but you're saying there's a whole, like your
there's a
organization came
whole.
in, there's a gap there of like those people, kids that have behaviors that could be, but they're just not even going diagnosed. So it's like this gap in diagnosis. So
Yeah.
that means you
Yep.
can't get
So before the
insurance. Is that like how it trickles down of because there's
so
no
before the
diagnosis?
age of 10, they don't like to diagnose kids with much of anything.
Yeah, yeah.
8
Yeah.
to 10 years old, you start to really identify some of these behaviors, and
Right.
they don't like to label it. They don't like to diagnose it. And I'm like, so sometimes they get thrown just a general label. My daughter, in her case, because we had to get something figured out,
Right.
they gave her the ODD DMDD diagnosis. And we were
Okay.
like, that's not right. That doesn't fit it,
Right.
And as we went, we're like, hey, we're still not getting treatment. Even with that
We're
diagnosis,
not
we're
getting
not
the
getting
right treatment.
options.
Yeah.
And then we ran into a lot of kids with the same issue where it was like, okay, well, you gave them a DMD diagnosis. That's great. You can get them into therapy now, but therapy isn't working because why? Because their brain is too underdeveloped
Right.
to understand what you're trying to teach them. So now the behaviors are elevating, the aggression is elevating, the incidences that are happening at home, calling the crisis team, calling in home support is all not working. Now we're still before age 12 and these kids cannot be in any residential treatment. They can't do any long-term inpatient stays,
Whoa.
which and so it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do for these thousands and tens of thousands of kids
Right.
that are being missed just in Utah
Right.
because there's no programs that benefit them?
Yeah. The numbers they're staggering.
It's staggering. Yeah, before the age of 12, if your child needs anything more than one-on-one therapy, you are SOL. It doesn't happen.
Well, and then you get families that feel lost too.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And then in the process of this, we're figuring out that there are counties in the state of Utah that have no mental health services. None. In whole counties.
Yeah.
Hundreds of
that's
thousands
across
of families.
every state.
Yeah.
There's a big, that, what is it? The mental wellness, what, Oasis or something like that, or the desert.
Yep.
So like, how do you feel like you're that, you found the gift, you found the purpose and you're applying it?
It's that's the best way to explain it. It's just it's awesome. It's amazing to be involved in it because you get to see families find the loopholes and find the results and get somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time it's incredibly overwhelming because you're like, this is great. I've been able to help 10 families and I've been able to help other families get what they need in the meantime,
Right.
right? Because mental health isn't just impacting their treatment.
Yeah, it's
Moms are, mom and dad's losing their jobs, they're losing
right.
homes, they're losing cars, they're not able to feed their families because they have to be home one-on-one with
Watching.
these kids.
Yeah,
And so they're losing everything.
the
And
care. Yeah,
that's really what got us fired up is like, yes, we need to get them connected with this, but like, we need to make sure that you are not losing everything else in the process.
that's right. So when you're going out the nonprofit, like, so is it easy to get funding then when you're going into like corporate sponsors to go, when you outline the problem, go, your money is going to help literally families just survive? Or is it because it's not a prevalent, like they don't see the problem?
They know the problem. It's
Okay.
it's not a matter of like we get into conversations with CEOs and with like major funders,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you have families literally starving and homeless because their child cannot get mental health treatment.
Yeah.
So, if nothing else, help us with funding so that we can provide them with food, shelter, clothing in
The
some
rent.
cases,
Yeah.
cover their basic needs
Yeah.
while we fight with the mental health authorities to get them services.
Yeah. Because that's
And
going to be and
they
the
don't.
delegates to be an advocate. Yeah. It's to change the system is so difficult.
Yep. And it is systemic all the way to the top,
Yeah.
all the way up.
We just need to amplify this. So I'm gonna tell a story because it's like bringing back kind of a memory of, you remind me of my dad and my dad's story. So my dad was uh, he went to Duke Divinity School. He was a Methodist priest. And he's about 5 years into his career after school. He had been moved to Kentucky and then North Carolina and then Georgia. That's where I was born. Somebody in his congregation just happened. This is in late 70s, or excuse me, late 60s, early 70s, and somebody's congregation like, I remember having a sister, but then she disappeared. And I knew she had but we didn't know anything. I want to go find my sister. Like, I just remember when I was little, there was, and my dad goes to, like, all right, did she have problems? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. End up being, he goes to the state hospital in Georgia, tracked her down. She was, severely retarded at that stage. And that's what you did. There were no resources in the 70s and 80s,
No.
if you were born with anybody with any spectrum of retardation, from Down syndrome to even, the severely disabled, you just shipped them to an institute. And what my dad learned was that, and this was happening not just in Georgia, but in, 50 states,
All
of
over.
all over. Um, and because you're right, nobody knew, couldn't keep them at home. You didn't know how to care, especially people that were very, aggressive and needed that like one-on-one all the time care. But what he found was that they didn't, the hospital systems, the institutes knew how to deal with, I think, other mental issues like schizophrenia and other, but retardation was a spectrum they did not know how to handle. So my dad was going into basements, into these institutions, and would find from infants to adults half clothed in their own feces, chained to walls if they were, had uncontrollable kind of like spasms, and they were treated as inhuman.
Yep. Yep.
And he was like, I think God has given me my purpose
Yeah.
it's to change, and then he had to break it down to go, how do we change the system in our thinking, and had to become an advocate, had to go up, to, and change laws, change the way insurance companies, obviously didn't do it alone, but, he partnered up with, found, it's called the ARC, the Association for Retarded Citizen, is where he started to really work and craft. But it took decades, but there's still hope of like, we changed, now that those institutions don't really exist anymore. There's now group homes, there's now the club systems.
Yes.
People can now code it in for insurance. There's, dentists that say, okay, I can handle, and hairdresser that like, we now cater to this, and they're diagnosing. I mean, just only in the last like what 2 decades, they're diagnosing autism differently. Also, not also, but Asperger's and all that.
Yeah. Yep.
That
They've actually started to treat schizophrenia has been started to be treated differently.
Yeah. But I'm just like, you remind me of it. Like, that was, you got to, he found that purpose. He was laser focused. It did take a lot, he's now passed away early. Cancer took him way too soon, but
Oh,
he
no.
made an impact, and yeah, so will you. Like, this
That,
is
and
because you're fighting for somebody that doesn't have a voice today. So you're their voice.
yeah, and that's and even the people that like we would consider them neurotypical, can just get anything done. I wish that I could, but I am among those with ADHD, and so the focus sometimes is the trick. But we coaching with people has been interesting and fun too, because I've started to figure out. Sat down one day, with the board, my board of directors, and I was like, what are we missing? What is it in mental health treatment as a whole that we could change? Just one thing. What
Right.
can we target one thing that would make a huge difference in anybody, any level, anybody's mental health? And we sat down and we talked for 2 days, and we were just like, there's got to be something that we can target. And just overnight sitting thinking on it, kind of doing some reports. And I was like, the number one thing that I can think of is if we can change somebody's mindset,
Mm-hmm.
if we can focus on just shifting the mindset just a little bit,
Right.
and being like not so laser focused on all of the chaos that's going on, but the end result that you want, and we can shift that just a little bit,
Right.
then maybe we can start attacking this a little bit. And so I put together a program, and I put together two different things. One I put together was called the Sing framework, and so I was like, if we're
As
going
in
to adjust.
SING?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, if we're going to adjust that, we need to make it simple. We need to make it easy so that anybody can know what to do. And I said, so we're going to break it down. And I'm like, what are the 4 things that you need in life? 3 or 4 things that you're going to need in order to make this happen. Well, you need support in your life. You've got to you can't do it alone. None of us can. You
Need your
need to be
community.
included in a group, not just in your family, not just in friends, but in a collective. And then we need to nurture that plan. We need to work with it, identify what your needs are, and then you need to see growth. You have to see forward movement.
Yeah.
And so if we can help anybody achieve those 4 things, short term, long term, it doesn't matter, you're going to see a huge shift in mental health. And so we started implementing that in all of the case management that we're doing. We started doing that in some of the coaching that I'm doing. And the shift that you see in people, it doesn't take much, but just
The baby steps.
one little step, and you watch people go, I can do this.
Yeah.
And just that little spark is all it takes. They say a spark can light a forest fire.
That's right. That's right.
And it's the same thing when it comes to mindset, just one shift. So I started calling it the 1-degree shift. And it's like, an airplane, if you take off from LA and you're aiming for New York, and they're off by 1 degree, they will land in northern Florida.
That's
So
crazy. Is that real?
1-degree shift. Yeah. You will land somewhere between southern Georgia
That's
and
a
northern
fun
Florida.
factoid. Oh my goodness. Okay.
So, change one thing in your life, focus on one topic, one goal,
Yeah.
and shift your whole life in 1 degree.
I love that. I'm looking at Chandler going, take note of that. We need to blast that as the lesson learned of, that's a good factoid. Okay.
Yeah.
Kaden, if you could change 2 things, if you could pick 2 things about your organization or the coaching business today, what would those two things be?
Funding is our biggest struggle right now.
Yeah, I bet.
Funding
Yeah.
is, and not just in a cute,
Like
you know,
what's the number? What's the number you need to make impact?
we need, for right now, we need 150,000.
Okay. Well,
We're
let's
not,
shout out.
we
Yeah.
don't need millions. We need 150,000 to do our programs for this year. And that will
Let's make that
impact
happen.
more than 5,000 families with that 150,000.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So if someone gave $1 million, I mean,
That would impact families for the next decade.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. What's
That
the second
covers
thing? Yeah.
this. And then the second thing is, we need more involvement. We need more families
Bigger
willing,
support. Okay.
not even bigger support. We need more families to come forward. We need more families to
To
say that
identify
we
them.
need help,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of families that don't want to talk about it, that it's you were raised that it's very hush hush, and we know there are families that are being missed. We know there are families that are being in the struggle, in the chaos,
Right.
and that they're just not getting the help they need.
They're suffering alone and they need to,
Right.
and they probably don't even know that there's support out
And
there
that's the
to
thing, they
elevate.
don't. We hear so often that I didn't even know this was available.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's why we're here. That's what
why
we're
you're
trying
there.
to help with.
You guys fill that gap. All right. So if we met 1 year from now, 2026, we're celebrating. What are we celebrating?
We are celebrating national reach. We are celebrating right now. We're regional. We are working this year on national reach.
So what does that look like?
Right now, we've got advocates in 5 states.
Okay. You need them
We
in all states.
need them in all states. We need to get a feel on what is happening in every state.
Is there data available for every state? Like, you went to the director of that one institute, like, and he was like, oh, I have to give my data. Is that data like at a national level?
Yeah.
Or is it state
Yeah.
by state?
It's state by state. The national department should be getting that data.
Okay.
But their data, if we go to the state level, is about 1.5 to 2 years behind. If we go to the national level, it's 5 to 10 years behind.
Whoa. So you need the state by state.
So we need state data.
Well, what advice would you give? Like, now that you've gone through it, and if someone had said, "Hey, I have my own purpose. I found my own gap in like some care, and I'm going to do exactly what you did, but I'm going to focus on my cause." What advice would you give that next founder?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. We let anxiety get in the way of doing what we really, truly know to be necessary. Taking that first step will make you take the next step.
I like it. Nike should be sponsoring our podcast.
They should be. They should be.
Just do it.
But just do it. Take the steps. Don't let the fear control you.
That's right. So if you had to sum up your entrepreneurial journey in just one word, what would that word be?
Fire.
Fire. Because you were mad, that fire under the belly.
The passion and the fire just keeps everything rolling.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure the news stories that you're hearing, and it's like, okay, does it feel good that you're like, we continuously get validated of we're not alone, we're not alone, we're not alone?
It does. And then it's immediately followed up by, holy crap.
Like, the problem is bigger than we thought. And then if you look into the future and go, my next chapter is going to be made up of this journey. What is the word that sums up that journey?
Stages.
Stages. All right. Explain.
Stages. So we've spent the last 5 years working with individual families. And so we're making an impact in individual homes.
Okay.
The next step is actually starting in 3 weeks. I was like, doing this one-on-one is just not as effective anymore. And so we're going to start doing it in mass.
We got to do it at
I'm going
scale.
to start talking to public, events, start getting into schools, talking to students directly, start talking with parents of these kids and let them know that there is definitely hope out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to go on national stages in the mental health arena.
That's the goal. That's what we're working on. So I'm
NAMI needs to
starting.
know who you are if they don't already.
Oh, they do.
Okay. I was like, do they know about you? You need to know.
They know who I am. As a matter of fact, I've applied to speak at 3 of their events, and I've been denied for all 3 of their events because of my approach and because I'm not willing to be quiet.
Well, that's not right. Because we shouldn't be in this, and they should know better.
Yeah,
They need
it,
they need
there's definitely a purpose behind it, and I understand their views, but I also understand the views of the families that we work with, and
Yeah.
so it's working to again bridge that gap.
That's right. Amazing. So this is, is there something that's like not on your resume or LinkedIn or whatever, but is there something our listeners would be surprised to learn about you or, you know?
I've surprised a lot of people when I told them that because of this, I actually authored a book. And so I've got that book out of raising resilient children. And I had so many people that said, I wish there was a manual or a book out there that told me what to expect in treatment and what to expect with what the process could look
Just the
like.
roadmap.
Yeah. And so I wrote that book, and that is a guide of sorts of this is kind of what options there are in the mental health field and what you could expect.
Yeah.
And the people that have read that book so far have sparked me to write the second book. So there's another book that'll come out I'm hoping by March.
What's that topic? It's just like part due, or is it a
That
whole
one,
different like niche?
it's a similar book. The first book I figured out was I understand things from a very professional level. I've spent a lot of time researching and
Okay.
understanding it. This book is called One Parent to Another, A Guide to the Mental Health System. This is,
Way
I got
relatable.
out of the out of the professional role
Right.
and said, if I was a parent, this is how I would want it explained to me of what to expect.
It's like
And so
the what to expect when you're expecting. Well, this is the very similar.
this is very, very similar.
And that's needed. Like I'm sitting there
And
going, if I was going through this as a parent, I've got 4 kids. I've been very fortunate. They've been, healthy and we've had just normal kind of
yeah,
disciplinary, whatever issues, but I can't like I put myself in these shoes to go, I would want that. Like I would be thirsty
yeah, yep.
for that. Like what questions should I be asking? Because that's where my mind
And
goes.
that's
It's a
and
spinning
that's
of
in
like
there.
that why, what? How
Yep.
does
And
this
that's
work?
and that's in there of like, you get into this professional and you get in front of the therapist and they're
Right.
telling you this is not diagnosable. Why is it
Right.
not? And who do I talk to next? And that's in that book of like you get denied now. Here's the next step. Don't wait around. Don't panic.
Do you have a title for that book yet, or is that going to
Yep,
reveal?
that's the title of it is the One Parent to
Oh,
Another,
the
a
one
guide to
parent.
the mental health. Yep. So
Okay. Well, very good. Well, my goodness, I'm just looking at the time. I tell you, these things go by so fast. I say this every
they
time.
do.
I'm amazed at how fast these but you provided so much insight and your story and your journey is amazing. Before we go, where can people find out more about your organization, how to donate, how do they find you?
So if you want to look into the organization directly, you can go to mendingmindsvillage.org. If you are looking for information on coaching, if you want somebody to work with you one-on-one to adjust your mindset, you want to book me for any of your stages, you can do that at kadenmattinson.com.
Very good. And we will tag you on all of this when this episode airs. So thank you for coming on our show. This was fantastic.
No, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah. For everyone listening or watching, thank you for joining us. The podcast will be available, of course, on all the podcast platforms. So choose your favorite, subscribe to Hello Chaos, give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. We love that. And share this great content. Help us build a more connected entrepreneurial community. Hello Chaos is one of the many resources brought to you by Orange Whip. That is Orange Whip, WIP for work in progress, because that's what we all are. Orange Whip is a multimedia company dedicated to serving founders and entrepreneurs in affiliate cities. We are a first of its kind. We've designed hyper-local media platforms to inform, inspire, and be the independent connective tissue between founders and the local entrepreneurial ecosystem. Our innovative digital zines are an all-in-one content hub with fresh and engaging stories, local curated calendars, local dynamic roadmaps to help people navigate those local ecosystems with ease. We've done the hard work for founders, so all they need to do is go to one trusted source to find the local information. Every city needs to have an Orange Whip. We're currently in 3 markets in South Carolina, and we'll be expanding to a city near you. If you'd like to be a guest or support us, just send an email to hello@orangewhip.com. Y'all, thank you for tuning in to Hello Chaos. It is where aha meets oh shit, and I will see you again next week.